Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. And you can ask me anything in this live stream. We already have a lot of great questions submitted about self publishing, productivity, creativity, marketing, more personal questions, more questions. So at this point, I'm not taking questions from the Google form that I shared. So for those of you who are watching live, if you have questions, please type them into the chat. I will try to get to them. I'm going to begin with the questions that have already been submitted. And before we begin, I do want to let you know that I'm going to be announcing a giveaway towards the end of this AMA. There's no sales pitch in this. This is not some sort of webinar or something. But I am going to be having a giveaway. I'm going to announce it towards the end of the webinar. I plan to be here about an hour. If we happen to be looking like we're going to be going longer, I'll go ahead and announce it at the end of the hour. So for now, let's just get to the questions, and feel free to chat into the chat box if you have any questions yourself as I'm answering these questions. So I have a question here. It says, I have made 8 children's stories that I published through KDP being Kindle Direct Publishing. They have only sold to friends and family. I have been focusing on improving my stories and not marketing. How would you recommend promoting the stories and brand? I think that you have kind of the right idea in improving the stories and not so much on the marketing, but you do eventually want to be working on the marketing. I think that the easiest way to do this is just with Amazon ads. You got to make the investment. I think of it as like, people will spend $100,000 on an education, depending on where you live in the world and where you go to school. And they will freak out if they lose $5 on Amazon ads. It's kind of strange. I like to think of it as like an investment, as in an educational opportunity, as tuition, if you will, to be paying money for Amazon ads and just getting some sales, giving your book a chance. Another way to do it is also by running free promotions, but you need to get some people to read your books, and then through that you will eventually get some reviews. And this takes a long time to get better at, and sometimes you can learn a lot about your book and the quality of your book through the performance of your ads. So just as an example, I made only $3,000 of profit on $15,000 of advertising. I spent $15,000 in advertising, made $18,000 the first year that The Heart to Start was out. 4 years later, I've now made, instead of $3,000 profit, I've made $23,000 profit, and I've spent $60,000 on ads. So I've made about $83,000 on $60,000 ad spend. Now, mind management, not time management, I learned a lot through marketing The Heart to Start with Amazon ads. And a lot of that went into the cover, that went into the title, that went into the description of the book. And I think that some of that has paid off. I think that's part of the reason why Mind Management, Not Time Management is doing a lot better. I have made, we're about a year and a half in, I've made $40,000 profit on $30,000 ad spend. So I've made $70,000 and I've spent $30,000 on ads. So it takes a little bit of learning and some investing. I think Amazon ads is the most direct, lowest investment way to do it. Just an auto campaign. And if you're not getting impressions, increase your bid really high and make it your mission to lose $100 or something like that as an investment in your education on book marketing. Make sure your covers are great, of course. And then as you're going, build an email list that will make you less dependent upon Amazon. I know that I'm very glad I have an email list. I'm starting to make some direct sales. And your email list, it might not be much to start. It might just be a simple message in your books, sign up for the email list. Freebies are really great. Now, if you're a children's book author, I don't necessarily, it's not super obvious how you would incentivize people to sign up for the email list. One idea might be like, oh, you sign for my email list. I'll send you a PDF of characters you can print out and then cut them out and make them into finger puppets for the characters in your book, just as an example. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good on this. You can worry about freebies and stuff later on. Just at least have an email list. ConvertKit's probably a good one. My affiliate link, if you want to contribute, would be kadavy.net/ConvertKit, or if not, you can just go to convertkit.com. And I'm just going to look really quick at some of the other questions we have here. Is there a website or course to recommend to learn about how to draft and test and improve Amazon ads? There's a book on Amazon ads that the name of it escapes me right now, and I can actually, I think it's Mastering Amazon Ads. I believe the author's name is Brian something, and then there's a Facebook group to go along with that, and that can give you some ideas on improving your Amazon ads. But again, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good on this, and just an auto campaign. I mean, I've gone down the rabbit hole trying to tweak everything, and auto campaigns work pretty well. Lock screen ads are pretty good if you're selling ebooks. This was a children's book author we're talking about. I don't know how much ebooks are sold, but the lock screen ads are pretty good. And keep in mind that the reporting that you're getting from Amazon is not is especially on the lock screen ads, not accurate. So it might say that you are not making sales, but if you're getting clicks and you look in your KDP dashboard and you're getting sales, the ads are working. And I see that actually is kind of a good thing because less competition for bids. And hello to everybody. Mastering Amazon Ads and Author's Guide. Thank you, Tin. I hope that I'm saying that right. All right, next question. I'd love tips on coping mechanisms to handle burnout from the grind and other responsibilities that get in the way of the dream. Okay. Yeah, I think that we can all relate to getting burnt out. I think I would start by asking myself, what is burnout to me? Because I think burnout might be different things to different people. Actually, in the chat, can anybody describe for themselves what they feel like when they're burned out? And while I'm waiting for those responses to come in, I'm going to say, for me, I think that it's doing work that's drudgerous. It's doing work that feels like it's not going to be worth it. It is a feeling of a lack of control, that there's kind of too many different things going on, and I don't have a good filter for what efforts are worth it and what efforts are not, or where certain things are going to end and other things are going to begin. So I think some ways to fix that are to have a little bit more control, have a little bit more certainty, and be more comfortable with the uncertainty that's inevitable. So I think first, I personally, I have as much control as I can have. So I'm always trying to have more control, and that's kind of a ongoing long-term lifestyle decision thing. Second, having a little bit more certainty, and also maybe being more comfortable with uncertainty. It sounds weird, but making predictions. I love predictionbook.com. It's free. It's this old kind of crappy website. I hope that it doesn't. I hope that it continues to run. But like, for example, when I'm doing a promotion on a book, I'll make a prediction, and it's a binary prediction that's like, by this date, I will sell this many copies, or I won't. And then I will make a prediction that's 30%, 50%, 70%. And I have found that exercise is really helpful in getting to understand not only that you can't have total certainty in a lot of things, but also to understand that there are some things that you pursue where you know that there's actually a low chance that you're going to succeed at this thing, and you can start to feel more comfortable with that. So I actually find that really helpful for burnout. I look at some of the responses about what people say burnout is: apathy regarding what I'm doing and giving up on my overall vision. Starting to think, why the hell am I working on this? There you go. Yeah, it's that certainty. Um, uh, how comfortable are you with the outcome of the input that you're putting in, and cannot stand staying in front of the work any longer. Um, Somebody recommends meditation. That definitely helps if you enjoy meditating. And the feeling of futility, knowing that you're working on something that doesn't matter enough, but you're unable to find a way to escape to something better. And yeah, so I also find that systems help for managing burnout. And I like systems for just removing thinking from a process. I hate to have the same thought twice, and it's probably true for a lot of people. And this can be extended to so many things where it might just feel like there's no point in even creating a system for certain things. So, for example, just like literally just like writing down the steps that you take to get ready in the morning. Where you find, and just like making a bullet point list of that. Okay, like what are the steps? And you start to realize that there's all these little tiny decisions that you make, or wastes of energy that you make, or you realize there's certain contingencies where, oh, if it's raining, I bring the umbrella. Well, how do I find out if it's raining or not? Do I have a notification that comes to me through if this then that? Do I just look out the window? How am I managing these things? Is there some sort of repeatable system? And having lists for very simple things. For me, it's like if I'm going to go to the golf course, for example, and it's a practice session, and then I'm going to like have lunch and work afterwards, I have like particular lists of here's all the things that I bring. So I don't have to think about the same thing twice. Um, I mean, that might not be a great example because we are talking about burnout, and it's wonderful to be able to go to a golf course every once in a while. But having systems that remove thinking, I find really helps with burnout. And also, sometimes you feel burnout because you are managing a crisis. I've had a number of crises in my personal life over the last few years. For example, I was having a lot of problems managing my father's health, and it was just like talking to a bunch of different doctors, and they are all asking me questions that they should know the answer to. And that was where I started using the Zettelkasten system, note taking, to actually like navigate all that, to actually have to ask myself, okay, what are the questions that I'm getting answered? When did he start this medication? Okay, how do I find out? Well, that's in a bunch of different documents. Let's all put this in a central place where I write it down, and now I'm ready for that type of question. Like there are these things that when you look closely, you find are actually a lot more repeatable and a lot less messy than you might notice on first glance. So I think systems relying on habits and checklists and whatever you can do to save your mental energy. And so that, in addition to getting more comfortable either with the level of uncertainty that you are willing to have in your projects, and the fact that sometimes you're taking on something that you know is a risk, that you know not might not work, and then other times you're taking on something that you do expect to work, and how good of a prediction are you making on those things. I also find like choosing doable goals, starting really small on something, also limiting how much big stuff you take on at one time. saying no. Sometimes you have something big going on in your life that is just taking up a lot of your mental energy, and you just have to be really ruthless with uh, just saying, okay, I only have so much front burner mental space for things, and so I'm just not going to be doing certain things at certain times. Just kind of catch up with comments here. Hey, and thank you so much, Kundin, for all the compliments. Next question. You've experimented with many means of publicizing your books. What do you think is the optimal pathway for a person who loves creating content but isn't so natural at publicizing? Uh, I love the assumption or the suggestion that perhaps it's natural for me to publicize myself, because I don't think that it is natural. I've certainly seen it look natural from a lot of other people who I think are a lot better at it than me. Laura Roeder, Ryan Holiday, Tim Ferriss, Jeff Goins. It seems to me that they're great markers. I do think that I get better at it. I've learned a lot over the years. I've been at it for 15, so it's taken me a long time to learn. Um, I think that if you love to create, that should be sufficient motivation to have a growth mindset about publicizing. I love the quote from Walt Disney. It's something like, "We don't make movies to make money; we make money to make more movies." And so, if you love creating something, it's wonderful for it to do well and to get paid for it, and and then you can do more of it. And I think that getting yourself into that mental space where you are able to see the benefits of getting your work to do well can take some of the sense of drudgery or the sense of confusion or overwhelm out of it a little bit. Another thing that can take the feeling of overwhelm out of publicizing, I think, is to focus on one thing at a time. So every time you get an idea of a way that you can market or publicize yourself, just keep a list. I've got a huge long list of different ideas that I've had for marketing books, but I make it a point to only be learning maybe one or two, or experimenting with one or two at a time, until I kind of get some sort of sense of control or system over some sort of sense of control or establishment of some system through which I can kind of take it from the front burner to put it in the back burner, to use some mind management, not time management parlance. So, for example, I was talking about Amazon ads earlier. I was obsessed with Amazon ads for months and was spending a lot of time and energy trying to figure those things out. And now I almost never look at them, or I will check in maybe once a week and trust that it's working out for the most part, and that if I make sure that there's nothing major going on, that I can feel confident, I can feel a sense of somewhat control and move on to the next thing. And so just focusing on one thing at a time, slowly chipping away at your skills in that one thing, and then deciding whether it works or not, and then creating some sort of system that makes sure that you're still doing that to some degree without so much mental investment energy, and then moving on to the next thing. I also think you can make the process of creation the means of publicity. So for me, it's worked out really well to have my income reports, where I'm not only improving my own thinking about the decisions that I make. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been in the middle of writing something in one of my income reports where I say, well, I don't know why I don't just try this. And I'm like, well, why don't I try that? And I wouldn't have had that thought if I hadn't made the income report. It works out really great for me because my audience is also people who tend to want to be authors or want to be creating things, or that's one section of my audience. So it has that nice overlap. But media is so participatory. So many people are trying to make it at whatever it is that you're trying to make it, that something like that can be useful for just about anyone. The prediction book was the prediction website somebody is asking is called predictionbook.com. Now, other experiments with marketing or publicizing, um, I've done experiments with like trying to create viral blog posts, trying to find a place where something will go. I've experimented with Twitter threads. I haven't cracked that at all. Amazon ads, I've done some of that. Um, Campaigns for trying to get people to review my books, I've done some of that. SEO, um, I've tried to market to libraries. I found that to be possible, but not a good ROI, I don't think. Podcasting, which is actually part of my process, really, is as I'm writing and thinking about something, I create a podcast episode about it, and then it sort of gets wrapped up into a book at some point. Publicity stunts like the ad that I ran in Times Square. These are all things that if you think about all of them at once, it's super overwhelming. But if you think about one thing at a time and you try to think about how you can turn an input into an output in each of those things, and you're only focusing on one thing at a time, you start to develop some skills in publicizing. How did you start building an audience for your writing slash books slash podcast, and how long did it take for that growth to reach meaningful velocity? So I started my blog more than 18 years ago, 2004. And I think it's probably taken longer for me to reach any level of success than probably anybody in the history of blogging. I feel like so many other people get so much more successful at it so much faster than I do. And I don't think I necessarily do it the right way, but I do it a way that's comfortable for me. I think that there's two different ways that people approach the world. There's the fox mindset. There's the hedgehog mindset. This is based off of an essay by Isaiah Berlin. The fox knows many things. The hedgehog knows one thing. And there's hedgehog. Being a hedgehog is probably the fastest way to become successful at something. You pick a topic and you talk about that topic, and that works great with algorithms, that works great with SEO, but it can feel very constraining if you're somebody who's curious about a lot of different things, and you can kind of feel like you're painting yourself into a corner. Now, if you're a fox, you're somebody who is interested in a lot of different topics and you want to explore everything. You can go ahead and do that, but it becomes a much, I feel like, slower journey to some type of success. I feel like it's a more sustainable journey. I personally have settled into where I kind of go for a mix of both. I do SEO content with my current SEO content is like book summaries. So, or specific how-tos, like I've got one on Zettelkasten. And this overlaps my sort of fox mindset in that I want to read a bunch of books. And so if I find a book that I really want to absorb, then I'll write a summary about it. And then through that, people who are interested in that book will find my summary and they'll find my work. There will be some sort of overlap or affinity there that attracts them to perhaps the rest of my work. And it allows me to kind of explore whatever I want and still build an audience to some degree. And yeah, and also things like Zettelkasten. Zettelkasten is naturally sort of a fox mindset thing. It is a collection of a lot of different notes. And by writing about that one topic, which happens to have a fanatical following, I'm able to attract a lot of people who are probably naturally attracted to my work. By the way, this relates, I think, to another question that I received, where somebody was asking about how you can build an audience without niching down, and I think this is a good way to do it. Is that if you have that fox cognitive style, just you'll find different topics that you can uh, attract certain communities or target certain SEO key phrases and such. And so it's almost like a little hub and spokes thing where you're the hub, but there's these spokes that are out there that are all these individual topics. And it's like I say, it's not the fastest way, I don't think, to build an audience. If I think of a counter example for myself, I used to have a blog that was an online dating advice blog, and I wrote that under a pseudonym, and I wrote with SEO in mind, and I gained traffic and made $150,000 on that blog pretty quickly because I was just focused on one topic. But I got bored. I certainly ran out of things that I wanted to write about, and it wasn't something that I wanted to make my personal brand. So it burned fast and bright and short, but I feel like the work that I'm doing, just based on my own interests as David Kadavy, I feel like that is a little bit more sustainable. So that's a different way to uh, to approach it. Now, reaching meaningful velocity, that came in bursts. I think it was starting. The blog was one burst, and then getting to Silicon Valley was another burst. Getting my first book deal was another burst. Doubling down on writing by doing like a daily habit of writing on Medium, that was another burst. And then I feel like my latest level up has been sort of taking the barbell strategy seriously. The barbell strategy being, I think, kind of like what I've described of having certain things that I'll write about where I am being strategic about targeting some sort of SEO key phrase, not necessarily like a huge opportunity, but something I'm interested in. And if I'm writing about this thing, well, might as well find out how are people gonna find this through a search engine. But then at the same time, experimenting with things that are kind of wild. You don't know if they're gonna work, like advertising in Times Square, for example. And look at the comments again. I'll just take a quick comment or question from the chat. Do you have someone to help you hold yourself to account and make progress on a day-to-day basis? I do not. And I think of this as the difference between an accountability partner and a creativity partner. I do think that it it a lot of people think of an accountability partner as, oh, I'm going to do this thing or that thing, and you're going to punish me or something if I don't. There are certain things that I will do. I will write every day. How have I gotten myself to do that? I don't really know. I think I've just tried to keep it a small habit. I've got a little email course about that called 100-Word Writing Habit at 100wordwritinghabit.com. By the way, if anybody's interested in that, I mean, just if you want to be a writer, for example, writing 100 words a day and getting going is helpful. But I do have a sort of accountability partner, but I think of it more as a creativity partner. And this is somebody who this is actually Phil Thompson from Wonder City Studio in Chicago. And I talk to him. He and I talk every 2 weeks, and we have a sort of mastermind. And it's a creativity partnership in that we talk about things that we would like to do over the next 2 weeks, and we certainly feel a little ashamed when we read over those things and we haven't done some of those things. But there's not any consequences associated with that. It is certainly more of an exploration of, okay, well, why aren't you doing that thing? Can we scope that down? Have you chosen the wrong goal? Is this something that you feel like you should do, but you don't actually want to do, and so therefore maybe should not do? And asking those types of questions. And I think it's really important to find somebody who um, jibes with you creatively, who has similar tastes and understands your sort of creative point of view and creative DNA. Phil and I met in an improv class in Chicago years ago, and we just really have we he is an illustrator. He sells artwork, and I'm a writer, and we do different things, but we um, there's a really good chemistry of taste there, of understanding that that creativity is this sort of journey where you can't necessarily force yourself to do a bunch of stuff that you don't want to do, and you're probably actually going to do worse work and suffer if you do that. And so for that reason, and also maybe just because I'm just you know don't want to hold myself accountable, I am not so much a fan of accountability partners, but more of a fan of creativity partners. How did you get your first book deal? My first book deal, I was trying to get a talk at South by Southwest. And the way that South by Southwest voting works is there's this panel picker, and you need to get people to vote for your talk idea. So one year I submitted to the panel picker, and I viewed that as like, okay, I'm totally not qualified to speak at South by Southwest, but I'm going to submit something anyway just to go through the process. And so I might have submitted multiple ideas, but I certainly came up with multiple ideas, and I got rejected. So then the following year, as it rolled around, you got to plan way ahead, by the way, for something like this, because South by Southwest is in March, the panel picker is like in June or July, and you want to be prepared for something like that. So the following year, I was more prepared for it, and I came up with this idea, Design for Hackers. And that was based on a talk I had done at a bar camp, which is sort of an unconference, that was called Design for the Coder's Mind. You can probably still find some video of it online. And that sort of, I thought about that and thought, well, there could be a better name for this. And at that time, I was getting pretty good at getting articles at the top of Hacker News for various topics. Much harder to do now. I can't do it now at all. But there's always some channel. There's always some channel out there where you can get some traffic. And my plan was, well, I'm going to write a really great article about the content that I'd like to talk about in this South by Southwest talk, and I will get it on Hacker News, and then at the bottom of the article, I'll ask for people to vote on my panel because I didn't feel, I wasn't famous or whatever. So I wrote an article, Why You Don't Use Garamond on the Web. It's up on designforhackers.com. And at the bottom of it, I had and maybe at the top as well, I had a, vote for my panel, the panel picker thing. And lo and behold, it was like front page of Hacker News, #1 on Hacker News. And I got an email from Chris Webb at Wiley saying, hey, I like this idea of reverse engineering beauty, of Design for Hackers. Would you like to write a book about this? And I thought, well, yeah, of course I would. And that's how I got a book deal for it. Now, my South by Southwest talk proposal got rejected. But because I got a book deal, I then later got invited to speak about that book at South by Southwest. And in the following year, when I submitted, I got a full talk. And so that was how I got my first book deal. What do you advise to a doctoral candidate who is on the periphery, far from strong research centers, on doing research? Slack and Zoom are a thing, but they do not replace one-to-one personal guiding. I ended up talking to this person a little bit, and so it sounded like there was a number of different ways in which they were struggling, particularly with very specific programming problems that were specific to their field, and it sounded like there could be a few different aspects of this. So if it was about staying motivated, which actually was one of the aspects when I talked to this person. If you struggle to stay motivated because you're in isolation, um, building any type of little audience is really helpful. I find it very motivating to know that there are people who are reading my stuff, even though I don't hear a lot from the people necessarily, but it is motivating. And that's how I share my process. As I write my books, I'm making podcast episodes and sharing my process, and that I find motivating. That's one way to feel a little less isolated. It takes a certain type of personality, because I am generally okay with sitting in a room alone most of the day. It's also um, good to get the time, a good way to get time of others in your field is to have like a podcast. Now, so if I was in academia and I was exploring some topic that there weren't a lot of people around me that were also exploring that topic, aside from, going to a conference once in a while and trying to make those connections, I would definitely have a podcast. And I wouldn't worry about size or revenue. I wouldn't worry about having fancy branding for it necessarily. Libsyn can provide all the tools that you need for like $5 a month. And they can get it onto iTunes. By the way, if it's SoundCloud, I don't think that something that's just audio that's on SoundCloud that doesn't, according to Rob Walsh at Libsyn, and I agree, that's not a podcast. It has to be in Apple Podcasts for it to qualify as a podcast. Libsyn can get you in there. SoundCloud, I don't think can. They're not really a podcasting platform, but it's something people sometimes use for audio. But having a podcast is a great way to get a little bit of time with people in your field and to have discussions about things that you're working on. And don't even worry about the size of the audience, really. And having a bigger audience can help get some people to agree to be on your podcast. But there's certainly got to be some people in your field with whom you can have conversations, or you can do solo episodes where maybe you are talking about, say, the programming problem that you were struggling with and how you came up with a solution for that. And that can start to attract people who are interested in the same things, and you can start having conversations with those people. Anchor, I don't know a ton about Anchor, but if they get you into Apple Podcasts, I think that's good. But also, whatever. If SoundCloud does work, if Anchor does work, and you are able to get people to be on your podcast who are in your field, then it doesn't really matter. But I think just having the process of something that you're creating, I think that it's good to focus on, when you're choosing what to create, on who you want it to make you into, less than what it is that you're creating even. So I make a podcast, but I make a podcast because the thought processes that I go through to make the podcast help me be the type of person that I want to be. If I'm writing a book summary, I'm not necessarily writing the book summary. It's there's a couple of motivations there. One is that I'm making something, but I'm also helping myself understand the book a little bit better. So if it comes to being an academic and you're making a podcast to have conversations with people in your field, then that's actually what you're getting out of making the podcast. The podcast is really just kind of a byproduct. And Kundan said, wow, so expected about the book deal. Yeah, that's absolutely, I think, the way to go about creativity, is to put yourself in situations where unexpected things can happen. You can't connect the dots moving forward. You can only connect them in reverse. You can't predict or engineer a black swan, a positive black swan, as Nassim Taleb would call them. You can really just do things that are exposing you to a lot of different things, increasing your chances of luck, expanding the surface area, your luck surface area, as I've heard somebody describe it. And so that's kind of what was happening by submitting the talk to South by Southwest. You never know what'll happen to that. What will happen with something like that. And also that's what's happened with the Times Square ad. Yeah, I did get a retweet from Tim Ferriss, which was something that I was trying to engineer, but then I also got invited to speak at the New York Public Library. The New York Public Library made the book of the month for their business center, And they also ordered all of my books, and that was something that came from that I didn't necessarily expect. And then I've also been asked about that a lot, so it's uh, not a lot of this. You aren't necessarily trying to make a particular thing happen, but or you might be trying to make a particular thing happen, but with the understanding that you are exposing yourself to this luck, and you have no way of predicting exactly what's going to happen good from those things. Question of the two, which do you recommend, Medium or Substack? I feel like it kind of depends. I don't know a lot about Substack. I haven't used it. I don't subscribe to any Substack newsletters, but just looking at it, it does look like it's really great if you have a particular focus. If you're an expert on a particular topic, if you're a journal with original thoughts on a particular beat, then something like Substack is great. But looking around to say their categories, there's not a category for creativity, there's not one for writing, there's not one for productivity that I can see. So I'd be kind of screwed there. So for somebody like me, Medium is a good place. But I think if you have a more specific interest, that Substack might work, especially if it fits within any of their categories that they have out there. I like how Medium, I don't write on there a lot now, but for a while there I was writing every day, and I was writing about a wide variety of topics, and it allowed me to explore what I was interested in, build an audience in the process, and kind of cut my writing teeth a little bit. Do I do webinars on Zoom or just YouTube? I don't do webinars at all anymore. Do I use editing software like Grammarly? I do not. I found Grammarly annoying when I tried to use it, and I've learned a lot from having people edit my books, and I guess I'm sort of self-editing when I edit, not necessarily always when I write, but I do try to learn what I can about how to write properly as I do write. How long did it take you to finalize your 7 mental states? On a semi-serious note, as you settled on per golf par, how much energy went into looking up synonyms that would allow for a catchy acronym? The 7 mental states came to me pretty naturally. I think there was some sort of precursor in a course that I have called Motivational Judo, and I don't actually remember how things have changed since then, but things did sort of naturally fall into mental states. And as far as coming up with an acronym, I think a little bit of effort went into that, but not a ton. I would like to be better at that. I feel like 7 letters is a lot. I don't know how well people remember it. 4 letters is always great. It doesn't come naturally to me to come up with these sort of catchy things, but I do understand that they do help an idea have that viral quality where it can be easily shared and remembered. Have you made any more soap lately? So I make soap. I use my soap to wash dishes, to shower, and my partner and I make soap out of the fat that we get from making chicharrones. You could use bacon fat, I guess, but there might be some sweetener in there or something. I don't know how well that would work. But when we make chicharrones out of like pork belly, there's often a lot of fat left over. So we started like making soap out of it. There's a lot of really cool videos on YouTube about how to make soap. It does involve some dangerous chemicals such as lye, but you at least like get to make some soap that is exactly what's in the soap. And I've gotten a little bit more sophisticated at making soap, where I'm added some coconut oil to the mix, some avocado oil, and there's different calculators online where you can change the properties of your soap just by adding different types of oils to it. And it's a fun activity. I feel like it's a good step towards being able to be self-sufficient in a homestead or something, which I think it's one of many probably useful skills for any human to have is to make soap. So give it a shot, but use caution at your own risk. How is your fiction writing coming along? What steps are you taking? What resources are you using to develop your storytelling skills? Ah, nice catch. Yeah, so I've been working a little bit on some fiction writing. Uh, and it started with just sort of a vague vision and feeling. Just, I'm not actually a huge fiction reader. I just sort of have a sense that there's certain stories that I'd like to hear, or maybe it's just that I want to write the stories to scratch some emotional itch within me. And so I'm using what I call the surround and conquer technique to get myself more interested in fiction writing and to sort of surround it and get better at fiction writing. The way that that has worked so far is, like I said, I'm not somebody who's naturally that interested or in reading fiction. I'm a little bit more interested than I used to be, thanks to maybe the work that I've done in trying to get myself interested. But I've started with saying, well, I like movies, so I certainly like stories of some format. Now, people might ask, well, why don't you write a screenplay, or why don't you have that as a goal? And I don't, mostly because I find that to be very unmotivating, to the idea of writing something that maybe 7 people will ever read and will probably never get read. I would much rather try to write a book, which I know I can get some people to read, and maybe it becomes a movie someday. I feel like you have almost equally as good of a chance of writing a book and having it turn into a movie as you do writing a screenplay and having it turn into a movie, especially if you're somebody who doesn't actually want to make the movie. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, I like movies. So I have gone through the process of taking movies that I've liked and reading the stories that those movies are based upon. So, for example, The Body by Stephen King and Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank. Is it Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption? Anyway, that's another Stephen King novella. They're both from the same book called Four Seasons. The Body got turned into Stand By Me, which is an amazing movie. And then Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption, I think it got turned into Shawshank Redemption, of course. And I love both of those movies. So I've read both of those novellas. And then I've read those screenplays as well. Just to kind of get a feel of like, oh, how does a story change from novella to screenplay to movie? And so that's one way that I've found my way in. And through that, I have ended up reading some books then where I'm reading the book before I watch the movie. And then in fewer cases, reading the book where there is no movie at all. And so I have that has gotten me a little bit more interested. I see this as like a multi-year project. It's not a main focus of mine right now. I am also learning about story through certain screenplay books, such as Story by Robert McKee, which is fantastic, and then watching some of the movies that he describes in that book. And I also use the Zettelkasten method to capture ideas. Well, just if I have an idea, I'll just put it in drafts, and then I have an action set up where it will go into a Zettelkasten just for story ideas. And sometimes it is just, I'll be sitting there just writing down different memories from my own life, or as I'm writing down those memories, I'll get an idea for a story and I'll write that down. Those are just kind of all in one place of little notes. And then on top of all that, I am writing under a pen name, writing a little bit of fiction, practicing shipping somewhere online. I will not share either of those at this point in time. And it's certainly keeping my ego in check because nobody is reading any of it. It's kind of fun that way. It'd be fun to see if I can get any respect for that pen name without anybody knowing about it ahead of time. I would like to publish a novella at least. I've began working on one. Again, this is multi-year project. I have other focuses right now, and it's something that I'm kind of chipping away at. And I think that that's fine. Maybe I will never do it. I hope so. I hope that I do it, but maybe I never will. I think of it as what I would hope to do is to sort of build authority in reverse, where I'm writing all this stuff about creativity, and I have some authority to write about those things. But wouldn't it be cool if I later wrote some fiction that was uh, good, that maybe got made into a movie or something, and I had already written about the stuff the way that I thought about getting myself to do that? I think that would be really cool. Um, okay, so on to the next stuff. Have I learned Spanish already? I'm pretty good at Spanish. All right at it. I have a couple of habits that really help with Spanish. It's been a very long time since I've actively studied Spanish, but I have a couple habits. Well, one, my partner doesn't speak English. She knows some, but we speak Spanish primarily. I mean, primarily, but primarily I mean like that's all that we speak, except for a little tiny bit of English here and there. But we have a couple habits. One is reading a page from Catcher in the Rye every day. I've got 2 copies of Catcher in the Rye. One is in Spanish, one is in English. I love the Catcher in the Rye. And she reads a page in English. I read the same page in Spanish, and we read that out loud. And then, of course, we have questions for one another. And so that has made learning it easier and more fun. It's certainly very, very slow process. You don't see the process happening, or you don't see the progress happening, but it certainly is happening. Another one that has been fantastic for my listening, perhaps for my speaking as well, is I love Seinfeld. You could choose whatever you want, but Seinfeld is available on Netflix with Spanish overdubbing. And so there are a couple of my favorite episodes that I will just put on with Spanish overdubbing. And I'll put it on while I'm cooking. I'll put it on while I'm in the shower. I'll put it on while I'm driving. I'm obviously not watching it, but I'm just listening. And some days I'll put it on 0.7x, 0.75x speed. Some days I'll put it on 1.5x speed. Some days it'll be on 1 speed. But just kind of playing around with that, playing the same episodes over and over again, where you start to get the same sound patterns going on. And it's amazing how, as just over time, with no necessarily paying attention to it, you just improve at your listening skills and perhaps your speaking skills as well. And Kundan asks, you are using a pen name to practice your skill and test your audience in the fiction. I'm using a pen name for a couple reasons. One is I think that when I finally do publish fiction, I'll probably publish it under a pen name, and there would be some point at which I would tell the David Kadavy audience, so to speak, about that. And also, I just it's fun to start over with the name. If I could start over writing online, I would probably choose an easier to remember and pronounce and spell name than David Kadavy. I do think that I don't think it's a coincidence that James Clear, Mark Manson, Ryan Holiday, Joanna Penn all have these extremely easy to remember and spell names. They all do fantastic work, of course, but I do think that just as, a type of virus might stick to the nasal mucosa a little bit better just because of the shape that it is, I think that can be the same for a name, and that can influence your ability to succeed. Somebody was saying the other day about, I shared the story about how Stephen King used to write as Richard Bachman for a while, and they were saying, well, Stephen King is so much better of a name than Richard Bachman, and I think that that's absolutely true. You can't have a better name than King, really. So mostly it's just fun to just have a different name. I'd like to start over, and that's about it for just having a pen name. I would strongly encourage people to have pen names. Not even just one. Have multiple. Make up other Twitter accounts or whatever, any sort of thing that you want to play around with, it can be very freeing to write under a pen name. What are good writing goals for someone that is just starting to write? That was a question that I received. I think that there are 3 C's to writing: consistency, courage, and craft. I think that a problem that a lot of writers have early on is that they try to do all 3 at once. They're trying to be consistent, they're trying to publish, and they're trying to make it good. I think just focus on one at a time. So consistency is having some sort of writing habit. I have an email course called 100 Word Writing Habit at 100wordwritinghabit.com. 100 is actually in a number, it's not written out. And that's a good way to be consistent. Can you sit down every day and write 100 words? Then you're trying to do some sort of publishing habit. Can you publish on a regular basis? Then you're worrying about, can I make this stuff good? And it's going to get much better just through doing those first 2 C's, just naturally. Now that we're approaching an hour, I think there's a few more questions that I'll probably answer after this, but now we're approaching an hour. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to get to all of these, but I do want to let you know about the creativity book giveaway that I'm doing, and you are the first people to know, those of you who are watching this live. I have compiled a list of 20 of my favorite creativity books. Of course, includes some of my own books, which is why I wrote them. And I'm going to give them away. So that is at kadv.co/giveaway. I don't know if links can be shared in the chat or not. Let me try that. KDV. And if you sign up there, then you can be eligible for that giveaway. And I guess while that's going on, some of you who are live might be running off to that URL right now to sign up for it. But I'll go ahead and answer a couple more questions because I think that would be a good thing to do. Do you have any plans to traditionally publish a future book? If not, why not? What makes you stick to self-publishing? I'm always open to it, but the terms have to be right. I do actually traditionally publish. I traditionally publish foreign translations. I've tried to do my own translation and market my own Spanish version of how to write a book, Cómo escribir un libro, and that has proved to be very, very hard, and I haven't been able to sell very many copies of it. So I think, and that's a language that I speak decently, so I think it's much better with foreign translations. They know their market, they know how to do the marketing in that language, and so they take care of it. So in that respect, I do traditionally publish. The value has to be there, though. If I were to do something with a traditional publisher for an English speaking book, I just really like the complete control too of self-publishing. Even, it's not even necessarily that a traditional publisher might tell me what I can and can't do. I hate the idea of even having input from anyone that has any amount of skin in the game. I think that feedback is not a bad thing. It's good to get feedback, but if there's any element of feedback being interpreted as a directive that this is my taste, and so, are you going to change this? I don't ever want to feel that. I think that that's a recipe for bad work. And how would you select a creative project on which to work if you had many ideas, none that stand out as better? I say, if at all possible, do a little bit of all of them. If you've got a bunch of ideas, do a little bit of all of them. Scope them down, turn them into some sort of habit, whether it's like, oh, I've got an Instagram account for this or a TikTok account for that. You just do a slow burn, and you just try to see, will it pull you in? Do everything you can to get like a little bit of feedback early on with all these projects, and then kill some as soon as you start seeing signals that one's doing well enough that you're ready to commit yourself a little bit more to it. Don't get married before you date. And how do you make foreign rights deals for your books? So this is something that early on I tried to make an effort to get foreign rights deals. Foreign rights deals are awesome, by the way, because you've already written the book, and then you just get money for work that you've already done. So early on, I tried to pitch publishers. I tried to find foreign rights agents, and actually, I think like maybe the one agent I talked to was clearly like predatory, and um, definitely ran in the other direction as fast as I could from that person. And all the book foreign rights deals I've made so far Vietnamese, Polish, and Korean. I've gotten a number of inquiries for a lot of others, and it's actually a pretty slow process. So no telling if those are going to turn into something. Those have all come from publishers contacting me. So I think the best thing you can do is promote your book. They're looking around on Amazon. They're looking in certain categories for books that have a good sales rank, that have good reviews, and obviously be accessible. Have a website that people can find you, and you'll receive the emails if your books are selling well in your language. I've also found that BookBub, if you can get a BookBub deal, that triggers inquiries because they send that to like 1 million people or something, and some of those people are agents for foreign rights or they're uh, publishers in foreign countries, and so that is how I've been doing the foreign rights deals for myself. And I just recently got this one. What to do with all my written content, articles, journals, memoir notes, thousands of words and blog posts. I feel like I need a branding strategy, then use the content accordingly. Your thoughts? You sound like a an inductive person like myself, where you want to constantly be creating. You want to be creating a lot of different things. I think that it helps to maybe take some element of that and make it into some marketable thing, that you can turn into one little property. Or if you want to do like the hub and spokes um, method that I was talking about earlier, find some way to like take one of those and turn it into some sort of article that people searching for a certain thing might land on. And SEO is surprisingly still quite easy if you aren't going for super high competition keywords and key phrases. And you can play around with Google Trends or just publish the stuff and look at uh, uh, Google Console, where you can see what keywords are under what keywords are pages on your site showing up, which then you can say, well, actually, I'm getting a lot of exposure for this key phrase or keyword, and I don't actually have content for it. Let me write an article that actually does target that. And through that, you can kind of ratchet your way up and eventually find sort of your brand or whatever is that works for you. All right. This has been an hour, so I will go now. And thank you, everybody, so much for your questions. Again, the Creativity Book Giveaway. I'm giving away 20 of my favorite creativity books at kdv.co/giveaway. Thank you so much for coming. And I will get going. Have a great rest of your day.